Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Which NBA team is under the most pressure post All-Star break? Also, what's next for Kirk Cousins and the Vikings? And why the Bears only have two choices with the number one overall pick. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
An absolutely loaded Thursday night slate to kick off the second half sprint in the NBA. We've got Knicks Sixers, we've got Suns Mavericks, we've got Clippers Thunder, we've got Lakers Warriors. If you're a real sicko, we've got Magic Cavs. That has Eastern Conference playoff implications. Be serious here. Nick Angstad from Locked On NBA and, of course, Locked On Mavericks joins me now. And Nick, one of the things that we were trying to figure out as we look in the second half here, and I know it's not the second half, but it is the post-All-Star break run, is which team, which coach, which player, whomst is under the most pressure here as we close the season? Who is under the most pressure?
It's the second half for some teams that will make it all the way to the finals. It is their second half.
Right,
but for the teams like, let's just say the Bucks, they will not make it all the way. And so it will not be the second half for their season. The team I think with the most pressure on them right now is probably the Celtics to me, because they've got it. You've got all the players. You've got the thing set up. You've been to the finals once. You've been deep in the playoffs. As someone that covers the Mavericks, there's a weird Tatum stands and Luka stands. There's a weird rivalry between the two where they go, well, Tatum's been there. And you're like, yeah, man, you've won like 50 playoff games and still haven't won a title yet. And so you're starting to get to a point where it's now expected of you to get there. You're the best team in the NBA. The pressure should be on them at this point. Yeah. And for Joe Mazzulla, like if they fail early on in the playoffs, what's going to happen is all of a sudden all that stuff from, remember he was watching that movie, that Ben Affleck movie all the time?
The Town, yeah.
Yeah, remember he was watching, is all that weird stuff going to pop back up again? So I think the pressure is on them. And then probably I would go Clippers after that. Clippers,
why?
The Clippers to me, it's coming, we're coming to the end of the Kawhi, Paul George, window here. And you've got, Kawhi is 32, but he's got, injury history. Paul George is 33. James Harden is 34. I think there's a lot of pressure on James Harden to just do well in the playoffs, to just get past some of these demons that he's tried to exercise in the past. So I think there's pressure on them because they're as set up as anybody in the West as well with some of the teams that are ahead of them.
There is pressure on a team like the Mavericks as well, the team you cover. Luka Doncic right now third in the MVP race, according to our friends at FanDuel, but well behind Nikola Jokic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's 7-1. Nikola Jokic is a minus odds favorite to be the MVP right now. But while there hasn't been the noise because Luka continues to be awesome, we started this last year at the end of the year hey, how much longer do they have to put a serious contender around this guy? What is their urgency level right now to get something going here?
You saw it at the trade deadline. The pearl clutching about, the Mavericks, they traded these draft picks, these first round picks to go get, Daniel Gafford or to PJ Washington. They had to do that. They had to go pay and they had to go get somebody because they have to keep taking steps forward.
Daniel Gafford would turn into Wilt Chamberlain in Dallas somehow.
Well, Dwight Powell was about to hit number 5 all time in Mavericks games played. So if you're a center for the Mavericks and play with Luka, your career is extended and you're a lot better than what you actually are and all that. Luka makes centers better. But for the Mavericks, you've got Luka this year, 2 more years guaranteed, and then a player option the year after that. So the clock is ticking, and you already put yourself way behind the 8 ball last year by missing the entire postseason, squandering that opportunity in Luka's prime, basically. And, he's 23. I guess it wasn't necessarily his prime, but it is his prime because he's that good. He's been that good. And so you had to take that step forward. You had to do something. And so you saw how desperate they were in trying to make those trades go through, having to do that. The Kyrie trade was a move of desperation as well. We've heard the Jalen Brunson story get brought up again, how they messed that up and screwed that up. And now you have to keep taking steps forward. And Luka does have a good shot to win MVP. I think they've got some really good, like, prime national TV games against the Thunder, against the Nuggets, against the Celtics, against all these teams coming up where they can take advantage of. If Luka has some really good moments, the Mavericks are the number one clutch team in the NBA. They have the best record in clutch situations. If Luka can have some massive games like he's had so far, then he puts himself in the MVP conversation squarely.
All right, lastly here, Nick, as we finish up, what is a storyline that you know is going to run over the next couple weeks that you are already like, do we have to do this?
Do we have to do this with the Milwaukee Bucks? I've got to do it. The Doc Rivers Milwaukee Bucks. I'm already sick of it. He's 3-7. He's barely coached like a couple weeks. He's already throwing people under the bus. JJ Redick goes off on him about how he's done this before.
He's made more headlines and interviews than they have wins with him as a head coach.
3 wins, like the amount of, it's not headlines anymore, Peter, by the way. It's quote graphics that are made with weird,
exactly right.
with weird dot quotes.
I saw those tweets. I saw
that are made. And I just don't want to do this anymore with this team. I don't think there's enough time for them to try and put together a good enough season. Like, as somebody that loves the Bucks, like, do you think there's enough time to turn this around?
Listen, you know who agrees with you? Doc Rivers, apparently.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's enough time for them to turn something around. And so I think it's just going to keep lingering on. They also just added Damian Lillard at the beginning of the season. It's hard to make that adjustment. Yeah. Plus, they're trying a new coach. And now it's another new coach that already thinks himself as behind the 8 ball in this situation. It's just going to keep going. And I'm already done with it.
Stay up to date all year on the association by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On NBA on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up is Kirk Cousins, the guy in Minnesota next year. Before we get to that, Justin Fields is all of us. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Or you can just build a normal same-game parlay and juice those payouts. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. The Pacers, they're the biggest favorites tonight. FanDuel likes Indiana over Detroit by 11.5. This post-All-Star boon is already in full effect. Also, the Pistons, man, they stink. FanDuel, official partner of the NBA and the official sportsbook of Locked On. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Justin Fields is just like us. He wants all the trade talk to just be over. On the St. Brown Bros podcast, Fields said he unfollowed the Bears on Instagram to get a break from all the trade talk and speculation. And he compared it to a girl you like on the gram. Just because you don't follow her doesn't mean you're not into her. The problem for Fields is it seems like the Bears just aren't that into him anymore. We just got playoff expansion, and the college football playoff may be getting even bigger. The executive director of the college football playoff admitted the idea of a 14-team playoff came up for the 2026 season in Dallas on Wednesday, but wouldn't go into any more detail. The College Football Playoff Management Committee, which is made up of the conference commissioners and incoming Notre Dame athletic director Pete Bavacqua, met Wednesday and discussed potentially expanding the field after the current contract runs out following the 2025 season. New York Knicks all-star forward Julius Randle said Wednesday he is progressing in his recovery from a dislocated right shoulder, but didn't rule out season-ending surgery.
I think I plan to be on the court April 1st, probably. Yeah, just kidding. Gotcha. Early. Gotcha. No, I was just taking a day at a time, man. To be honest, every day I'm getting stronger, I'm getting better. So just taking a day at a time. Just continue just to try to just stay locked in on, what I have to do to continue just to get healthy, not just physically, but mentally.
The Kentucky Wildcats were in Baton Rouge for a potential trap game against LSU.
It's 75-74, the final score here today. Very frustrating loss for the Kentucky Wildcats, who I think did enough there in the first half and at the very end of the game to win it. Unfortunately, it's a conglomeration of defense, lack of rebounding, lack of focus, lack of consistency that this team just does not have. And they were unable to close out things down the stretch, even with some incredible heroics from Rob Dillingham, who had a phenomenal second half. Unfortunately, the rest of the team not quite on his level.
And on the ice, the Maple Leafs were in the desert to face the Coyotes.
It was a big night for the Maple Leafs as they beat the Coyotes 6-3 at Mullet Arena. They keep the winning streak alive, a perfect 5-0 since the Morgan Riley incident. A lot of good performances to get into tonight, but I think we got to start with one man and one man only, Dave. It was the hometown hero, Auston Matthews, that netted his 50th and 51st on the year. Lots of friends and family in attendance.
Yeah, the great part is like they tweeted out that Auston Matthews became the fastest American-born player to get to 50 goals. And then you look to see, who did he beat out?
Himself.
He beat out himself.
He beat out himself. He was tied. It was a tied record to be. Yes. He shared it. But yes, he beat himself.
It's been a while since we've had a quarterback feeding frenzy in free agency. Kirk Cousins, yes, that Kirk Cousins, he might just set one off this spring here in just a couple weeks. Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings joins me now. And Luke, you had been, at least for some period of time, been, hey, I think they worked this out. He stays in Minnesota. You kind of gone back and forth, I feel like, a little bit on that. Where are you right now on the chances of Kirk Cousins being a Minnesota Viking?
Yeah, as new information comes out, it kind of changes how you feel, right?
Yeah.
So right now, where the reporting is at is, and you make of this whatever you want, they will not fully guarantee his deal. That's something Albert Breer put in pretty clear terms and not speculatively. They've made it clear, that's the way he put it, that they're not going to fully guarantee a contract for Kirk Cousins. That might be enough for Kirk to say, all right, I'll take my chances on the market. They also, so the two writers for the Star Tribune, Andrew Kramer and Ben Gessling, have a podcast. And around the beginning of the season, they said that Kirk Cousins also had, in his camp, had offered the Vikings a contract and said, hey, I'll sign this. That would have been fully guaranteed through 2025. And it would have been sub $40 million a year. And the Vikings said, no, we don't want to guarantee that much. So they don't want to guarantee it and they don't want to pay them. It's like, it feels like Cousins has two options here. He sees if someone on the market wants to beat that, wants to do better than that, and kind of takes that risk, because once he hits the market and all the dead cap that happens to the Vikings, he's probably not coming back to the Vikings. So he could take that risk, or he could take whatever the Vikings are willing to give him, which is probably not satisfactory to him. Make of that what you will. Personally, I feel like he does better on the market than he does in Minnesota. If I were to try to make that call, if I were him, I think somebody like the Steelers or the Falcons or even like the Raiders or something like that, and pitting teams against each other in a bidding war probably do better. So I would anticipate that it's over, but it's not, I'm not sure in any way. We're just waiting to see.
How does the injury, the Achilles, that takes a while, regardless of what Aaron Rodgers wants to say, takes a while before you can be cleared to play, cleared to go, pass a physical. How does that impact the timeline here?
So he is, I mean, hey, he was up on stage dancing at the NFL awards. He's got his timeline for that he feels he's very confident that he's not going to miss any major time. You don't necessarily need to pass a physical. It's just customary, but you can waive it if it's a situation like that. That's perfectly fine. But it does add this layer of uncertainty where teams are just not going to be able to know if he comes. He's going to be 36 for this season. You don't know if a guy's going to come back and be the same guy after that. So you just have to accept that risk, and that's going to affect the dollar amounts. That's going to affect the guarantees. And Cousins might understand that affects the guarantees and go, you know what, maybe I will take that 1-year deal with Minnesota because I got to kind of prove that I'm healthy again. Maybe I understand that, and he does take the deal. And in fact, I think that's the most likely path for him to stay in Minnesota is the one where he says, I get it. I'm hurt. Nobody's going to guarantee me what I want to be guaranteed. I kind of got to go back and earn that again. So let's do a 1-year deal and give this thing one last ride.
it does seem like there will be plenty of interest from teams like the Falcons, the Steelers, potentially. There is this, I think, fever dream from some that, hey, put him on the Dolphins and he can be the guy to take that offense to the next level. What do you think makes the most sense from a team that is going to be presumably willing to go to the dollar amount and also truly elevates what they have going on?
Well, you and I have been saying Atlanta forever.
Yeah.
I still feel like it's Atlanta. There's weird reports about they want a young guy. They're going to be aggressive in the draft. You know, they
the 8th overall pick. So that contributes to this.
And there's a lot of weird stuff out there, but I do think that Raheem Morris, knows Kirk Cousins. They were all on those Washington teams way back in the day. So there's a familiarity there. I could see it. In Atlanta, I could see him really elevating the Steelers as well, and giving them the stability that they so crave as an organization. They're, of all teams in the league, maybe the ones that are the most likely to take a guy that will absolutely have you respectable and in the standings in December and early January. And especially if they're worried about not having that for the first time in a while, because they've never gone below 500 with Mike Tomlin, but every year it feels more and more likely.
Before, yeah.
That just feels like it works for their personality, and the Vikings have a similar personality, which is why they stuck by him for 6 years.
Stay up to date all year on the Minnesota Vikings by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Vikings on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, why the Bears only have 2 choices with the number 1 overall pick. There is a world in which Justin Fields is the quarterback of the Chicago Bears next year. So why not take the best player in the draft, the guy that everyone believes is a generational receiver talent? Well, the answer is because it doesn't work like that. The Bears have only 2 options when it comes to the number 1 overall pick.
Trade out of this pick if you're going to do it, but I do not like standing pat and taking a wide receiver if you're going to pass up on a quarterback. I'm not about to let anybody benefit. You're not getting Caleb Williams unless you're trading with me. You know what I mean? If I don't want him, you're going to have to make a trade. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, and it's that simple. And this is the thing, right? That that somebody wants him, right? So the Washington Commanders want him. Obviously, they picked him at number 2, right? So even and this is the negotiating part of the NFL draft, right? So you come in there and you say, hey, Washington, y'all want to move up to pick 1? We want 2 first-round picks. We want 2 second-round picks, and we want a player, right? And they say, nah, we're not doing it. Then you say, okay. Then you come back, right? And you say, okay, we want 1 first-round pick, right? And even if they say no to that, right? You say, you know what? Just, we'll swap first-round picks and then give us 2 seconds next year or a second and a third next year. Yeah, get something like that, right? And in that way, you get something out of the deal, but just giving up Caleb Williams, which is a commodity, for nothing at all makes absolutely no sense. And then this is the other side of this, DP. At pick 3, right? Who went at pick 3? Was that?
That was Drake May.
That was Drake May, right? You call the New England Patriots. Hey, do y'all want control of this entire situation, right? And you can have Caleb Williams or Drake May, and you have a new look offense altogether. And you ask them, do they want to move up to pick 3? And then what you do is, after you call the Patriots, you call the Commanders back, right? And you say, hey, I'm not going to tell you, but I'm about to tell you. The New England Patriots are about to do this. So that right at the top, DP, it threw me for a loop. Not the pairing, because I've made the pairing, but when I did my mock draft, I had them trade down, so and actually execute a trade and not just take Marvin Harrison Jr. And it's not about Marvin Harrison Jr., but it's about capitalizing on the draft capital you can get.
Here's why we know this is true. If the Bears were going to trade the number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, whoever you want it to be, they could get 3 or more first-round picks. They could get 3 first-round picks and stuff, or 2 first-round picks and a bunch of good stuff. There is not a receiver in the NFL who would get that kind of trade package. We know that because the 2 best receivers, or 2 of the 4 best receivers in the NFL, were just traded. And they didn't get that much. So even if Marvin Harrison Jr. walks in the door as good as Devontae Adams, yes, there's a cost factor here too. He's not going for 3 first-round picks. He's just not. Justin Jefferson would not command 3 first-round picks if he were to hit the open market, which means if you're going to draft or you want to draft someone other than Caleb Williams and you kept Justin Fields, you have to trade the pick. You can't stick and pick someone else. No one else is more valuable than the stuff you get for Caleb Williams. Or you do what the Bears are almost certainly going to do, and you just take Caleb Williams. If they stay and pick at number 1 overall, it will be a quarterback. Write it in ink, in paint, in Sharpie marker. And finally, I'm going to say something nice about the Chicago Bears. On Wednesday, Matt Eberflus filled out his coaching staff and announced the Bears have hired Jennifer King as their first female coach in franchise history. King will be working as an offensive assistant with the running backs. I don't say this often, but well done, Bears. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, who should you put your money on to win NBA MVP this year? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on Sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.